Well, here we are again. As Barbara Bush might say, the political odd couple is at it again. I apologize for dropping in unannounced, and when I called my friend President Clinton, Bill, last week and asked if he wanted to team up once again to help the Gulf Coast communities so terribly devastated by another havoc-filled hurricane, not only did he say yes, he also invited me to come here to this prestigious gathering, and I join him in announcing our new initiative to this most distinguished audience. If you're keeping score at home, this is the third time that he and I have teamed up to help the victims of natural disasters. We did it in early 2005, following the Indian Ocean tsunami that cast its waves of destruction from the coast of Western Africa all the way to the islands of Indonesia and claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. And then we teamed up in the fall of 2005 after Hurricane Katrina and Rita II slammed into the New Orleans, into the Gulf Coast, leaving the city of New Orleans devastated. And we tried to help in small towns like Cameron, Louisiana, and others as well. And since then, I might add, both President Clinton and I have accepted appointments as UN special envoys to help with disaster relief overseas, including earthquake relief in Pakistan. And so we've not confined these efforts just to America, but now we're coming to you just as we will be appealing to every American and every friend of America around the world to help our coastal communities recover from this latest onslaught of Mother Nature. From the historic island of Galveston, filled with its registered landmarks, to High Island, Port Arthur, Beaumont, and into Louisiana, on the way to Cameron, Terrebonne, Calcasieu, and St. Mary parishes, I'm sad to report that life is anything but normal for people down there today. There are families without homes, children without schools, dozens of American communities struggling for survival. And just as we could not turn away from the tsunami and Katrina victims 3 years ago, we cannot turn away from the good people today. So our appeal to you is a very simple one. Go to www.bushclintoncoastalfund.org, if you can remember that, and give as much as you can. That's bushclintoncoastalfund.org. And the money we collect will go to help with whole communities along the Gulf Coast recover, offering them the chance to reclaim some sense of normalcy along with the basic infrastructure any society needs to function. The road ahead will be a long and costly one for these towns and cities, but with our help they can begin the healing process and take critical steps toward rebuilding their future. The good news for President Clinton, for Bill and me, is that Jim Baker has agreed to be chairman of the fund, day-to-day running the operations of it. And a lot of you in this room know him well, and you know the best thing that Bill Clinton and I can do is probably just get out of his way. He's already off and running, and he's watching this right now back in Houston with a group of leaders from the Gulf Coast region who also are ready to go to work. So thank you all for hearing me out. My congratulations to my friend Bill on yet another highly successful global initiative. And you know, there's a coveted invite. I wasn't sure they were going to let me in. But when I told him I knew Bono, well, everything seemed to work out fine. So here I am, and very grateful to President Clinton for what he does, not only with helping on this, but with this whole global initiative. I have great respect for him, and we're friends, and that's a good thing to be when you're my a real friend.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to say, you know, this is very important to me. I love working with President Bush, and this whole Houston area is a big deal. You should know this. Houston used to be known as the oil capital of America. They've just adopted the cleanest, most energy-efficient building standards for new buildings of any city in the United States, second only to Vancouver in all of North America. They're trying to modernize, and their whole effort to do this is at risk of being compromised. And of course, Galveston and the other areas are in trouble. So I'm looking forward to this. I went to Jim Baker's Institute to make a speech, so he will forgive me if I gig him a little bit. I want Al Gore to know that he has promised to count every single dollar that is given to this fund, and we are going to get it out there and help those people. So I hope you'll help us. Thank you all. Let's get on with the schedule and try to get back on time. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Distinguished group you got up here.
Yeah, it's good, huh?
Is that meeting over now?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here today. Let me just say at the outset that I think it's really interesting to watch those two former presidents who now have a real genuine affection for each other, working together in disaster relief. They have been real disaster busters on the occasions when they've gotten together, and hopefully that'll be the case as well. People really don't care. You know, there's a real desire for and need for bipartisanship in this country, in our politics and in our public service, and these two former presidents have demonstrated that since they've left office. Let me say I look forward to working on this Coastal Recovery Fund, and I'm really honored to be its national chairman. This fund is going to, as you've just heard President Bush say, is going to solicit support from our fellow Americans around this country, but it's also going to reach out and solicit support from Friends of America around the world. We hope that we're going to be able to raise some money internationally. All of this money will go to help the coastal communities of Texas and Louisiana recover from a very, very traumatic hurricane season. You all know that there are other funds that have been set up, relief funds for the hurricane disaster, one established by Mayor White, one by the United Way. There have been some others. And I want to make it extremely clear from the outset that our effort is not going to compete with any of these funds. It is going to be complementary with these funds, and it's going to be complementary in several important ways. First of all, this Bush-Clinton Coastal Recovery Fund will solicit support, as I've just indicated, on both a national and an international basis. Having two presidents, one from each party, coming together like this during an election season, I think will give us a unique platform to reach a global audience. Because we are targeting national and international audiences, we will, if I can put it this way, be fishing in an entirely different pond than the other funds that recently have been established in the Houston area. Secondly, we're going to focus our efforts on recovery, not on relief. The distinction between relief and recovery is important. Relief efforts, of course, include providing necessities, water, food, medicine, during and just after the initial days of the event. We're going to have a little bit more extended time horizon. We're going to be engaged in trying to support recovery efforts in the medium and long term in the aftermath of the disaster. We will not be making immediate grants to individuals or families, for example, or we will not be engaging in case management like so many effective nonprofit organizations do. We're going to focus instead on the long-term infrastructure needs of the affected global coastal communities, and those long-term infrastructure needs are extraordinarily large. Finally, when we start to make our first grants, which is going to be sometime in early 2009, we're going to focus on the long-term infrastructure projects that coastal communities who've been so hard hit need the most. These coastal areas are the hardest hit, of course, during any hurricane, and so we'll be directing much of these privately raised resources to places like Galveston Island, which was ground zero during Ike, or Cocodrie, Louisiana, which bore the severest brunt of Hurricane Gustav just before Ike. Many of those living in these areas are still trying to recover from Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. As a fourth-generation Houstonian and a resident of this area for longer than I care to remember, I know that the people on the Gulf Coast are resilient, they are very proud, they are hardworking, and they're going to do whatever it takes to restore their homes and their schools and their businesses and their churches and their communities, but they need assistance. And that's what we intend to do by launching a national and international drive to raise as much money as we can to help. Somebody said, "What's your goal?" I said, "We're not setting a goal. We're going to raise as many dollars as we can to help." And I'd like now to call the press's attention particularly to the fact that we have established a blue ribbon group of individuals to serve on our committee. And some of them are here with us today. About half of the people who have agreed to serve were able to make it today. We didn't start this effort, by the way, until 48 hours ago. And we're delighted that those who could get here today are here. And I would like to ask them, as I introduce them to you, to join me up here. First of all, Doug Fauché. Doug is CEO of El Paso Corporation. If you all will all join me up here to the left. Jack Sweeney, publisher of the Houston Chronicle. John Now, Silver Eagle Distributors. Regina Rogers, attorney at law. Tillman Fertitta, CEO of Landry's. Jim McInvale of Gallery Furniture. Steve Miller, former CEO of Shell Oil Company. Dan Moody, president of Moody Interests. Ambassador Chase Untermeyer. George Strake, CEO of Strake Energy. Richard Zuschlag, CEO of Acadian Ambulance Service. Drayton McLean, owner of the Houston Astros. Elise Lanier, Commissioner of the Port of Houston. And Chad Deaton, who is represented today by Peter Ragaus, Senior Vice President of Baker Hughes. The names of the other committee members who have agreed to serve, ladies and gentlemen, are in your press packets, and we hope to recruit more of those in the coming days. Our distinguished committee is going to assist in taking our message of hope and recovery to as many people as possible. As you heard the two presidents say, we have a lot of work in front of us, but with the team our two presidents have assembled, I'm confident that we're going to be able to help a lot of people from our coastal areas get their cities and their towns, and most of all, their way of life back. Now, I'd be delighted to try and respond to your questions, and if I can't answer them, I've got a blue ribbon committee here who can.
Secretary
Yes,
Baker?
Mr. Secretary, what financial commitments, if any, have you already received?
Have we have, as far as I know, we've not received one financial commitment yet. We started this effort 2 days ago, and the first thing we had to do was pull together our committee. We haven't gone out and solicited funds yet, but we're going to be doing that post haste.
Mr. Secretary, can you give some examples of when you talk about infrastructure rebuilding, what you might be thinking about?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, churches, hospitals, schools, a lot of things on Galveston Island that need reconstruction. We've got Tillman Fertitta here, who's from there, and Dan Moody, both of whom would be far more competent than I in telling you what those immediate needs are down there. But again, I would emphasize we're focusing on recovery and not on relief. So there'll be infrastructure projects.
Secretary Baker, why was it important to make the distinction between recovery and relief? Because as you know, a lot of people still do need that relief. Yeah,
that's true, but there are funds that have been up and going for maybe a week or 10 days that are focused on relief, and we really don't want this fund, the two presidents don't want this fund to be competitive with funds that have already been established. Now, if we are as successful as the Bush-Clinton efforts have been with Katrina Rita and the tsunami in the Pacific, we may have some funds that if they're sorely needed for relief, we would be willing to apply there. But we don't want to be competitive with the other funds that have already been established, and we see huge infrastructure needs, huge recovery needs.
Mr. Secretary, I couldn't help but notice that Mayor Lyda Ann Thomas went to Washington, D.C. and asked for $2.3 billion on the same day that Capitol Hill was also considering a $700 billion bailout plan. I'm wondering if you want to comment on whether or not you think that it hurts her chances of getting the funding she needs from federal government because of maybe tightening the purse strings, or do you think it helps her chance because it's small change compared to the other?
I think it was the right thing for her to do. There are huge needs here. The Gulf Coast, since 2005, I think has suffered $138.7 billion in damages. So there's a huge need out there. And if I were the mayor of Galveston, I would have done exactly what she's doing, and I hope she's successful in getting the money.
Will some of the money that this fund is raising be work in conjunction with federal relief for recovery?
Probably will. We have not yet developed the mechanism for responding to grants or how people would request grants. That's going to be done here in the next week or 10 days, just as it was in the other Bush-Clinton funds that were so successful. It takes a while to get that machinery in place. Anybody else? You know, I might just add that some people have said that Ike was the third most expensive hurricane in our history, and they've estimated already damages, I think, in the neighborhood of $29.5 billion. So there's a huge job out there, and the more people who are trying to help, the better it is, and the more money we can raise, of course, the better it is. We very much appreciate the fact that all of you would show up here today and help us with this effort, and we look forward to meeting with you as we go forward. Thanks very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you, gentlemen.